Is Land O'Lakes, Florida on your radar as a potential new home? If so, there are certain top tips that you must know before you move here, and I'm going to break down all of them today so you can decide whether it's the right place for you or not. And be sure to stick around to the end because I'm going to give you a couple of tips that you might not find online as a resident who's been selling homes here for the last 20 years. Now, there are so many things you need to know about Land O'Lakes before you decide whether you want to move here or not, because the last thing that you want to do is spend this money on your dream home and make a really expensive mistake. And I'm not saying that moving to Land O'Lakes is going to be a mistake necessarily, but for certain there are differences in opinions as to what people love and what they don't. For example, I've had customers that love the fact it's a little bit more rural by nature, and then I've had customers that say they hate the fact that it feels too rural. So I'm going to make you aware of the key things that you need to know so you can make the best decision for you. Okay, with no further ado, let's dig right in. Now, Land O'Lakes, Florida has become very, very popular, especially over the last 5 years or so, where we saw that resurgence in the real estate market. And of course, when you see growth like that, it's going to make a difference in some of the key things that people look at when they're deciding to make a move. So I wanted to update this video and give you guys all the latest information. And let's start by taking a look at where Land O'Lakes is. Now, Land O'Lakes is about 25-30 miles north of Tampa, and essentially the southern end of it would be at State Road 54, and it would go all the way up further north, pretty much along US 41 is the route that it follows. And because it's close to US 41 and it's close to State Road 54, which in turn means it's close to the Suncoast Parkway toll road, it has fantastic access to Tampa. It's what makes it one of the more popular suburbs when people are looking to be close to Tampa, but not right downtown. So now let's talk about the culture in Land O'Lakes, now that we know where it sits on the map. The culture in Land O'Lakes definitely is pretty laid back, and it has that kind of old Florida feel still. I guess if you had to put a label on it, it would probably be like sparse suburban, but it has all of these lakes, as the name might suggest, scattered around as well, so it has some really great waterfront living opportunities. It also has maybe more of a rugged and kitschy feel, and it's not as uniformed as somewhere like Wesley Chapel, which has pretty much been built from the ground up over the last 15 years or so. Land O'Lakes has been around a little bit longer, and as such you have these kind of neat hole-in-the-wall places, and everything doesn't look extremely cookie-cutter. However, despite that, there are a bunch of great newer style neighborhoods around that have some awesome amenities as well, so it really kind of blends the best of both worlds. And of course, we'll talk more about those a little bit later on when we get into the real estate side of things. Now, the majority of the population in Land O'Lakes is a little bit older, so in my research online it said that the average median age is just over 42 years old in Land O'Lakes, Florida. Now, this number is about a year more than the Florida average and about 4 years more than the national average, so not drastically different, but certainly on the older end of things. And certainly when you're comparing it to somewhere like West Chase or like Wesley Chapel, you start seeing the differentiation there. Now, if bars that stay open late and clubs is your center of attention, then your Land O'Lakes is probably not going to be on your radar. There are several other places that are better suited for that. But it's not totally non-existent. I mean, there are bars up and down US 41 and a couple on 54 that do stay open later. They have live music, karaoke. Some of them are kind of dive bar, hole-in-the-wall type places with some real character to them as well. So those are very, very cool. Yeah, I really love that dive bar scene. I used to love that when I was drinking a little bit more back in the day, or even from the UK. We used to go to those little hole-in-the-wall local pub places. But it's not going to be on a level anywhere near like somewhere like Tampa or even West Chase or Wesley Chapel for that matter. Now, some of the most popular activities in Land O'Lakes, as you might expect, are going to revolve around the water. So with that easy access to water, you have boating, fishing, kayaking are very, very popular activities. There's a ton of stuff to do in nature at the state parks that surround as well, whether that's camping, hiking, bike trails. It really is perfect for the outdoor enthusiast. So if you are looking to move here, definitely take into account that type of culture, environment, and activities to do. I'm Ross Hardy from the Hardy team, and welcome to the Living in Spring Hill, Florida channel, where we break down all of the best suburbs north of Tampa. So that's West Chase, Wesley Chapel, Land O'Lakes, Lutz, Odessa, Trinity, Spring Hill, Brooksville, and all of the other areas you might consider if you want to be close to Tampa but not there. Now, I've been selling homes here for the last 20 years and we help over 200 families a year. So we're local experts on the ground and we can answer any questions that you have, whether you're 9 days or 99 days away from making that move. There's never a time that's too early to reach out and have questions answered, so be sure to hit us up in the information below or leave a comment. I answer all of those personally. Now, next up, if you are thinking about moving to Land O'Lakes, let's talk about the population density. So it's very important to know that it's kind of a small, medium-sized suburb, which has a rural feel, like I've already said, but it casts a very, very big footprint. You know, you could say the vibe is kind of country a little bit, which is very similar to what I grew up back in England with. So I love that kind of feel. Even though US 41 is kind of a major road, you can be driving down it and still see cow pastures even to this day. So it hasn't been completely bulldozed and started again, which is what some of the other suburbs maybe feel a little bit like. It definitely maintains that quieter, slower pace of life and that more rural feel. There's a lot more green space compared to a lot of the other suburbs, and the homes maybe have a little bit more land with them as well, so definitely consider that. And the population right now is around about 41,000 people. So if you're thinking that would cause traffic issues, because it does have a larger footprint, that's really not much of an issue at all. Now, US 41, where it meets State Road 52, has always kind of been subject to a little bit of road work going on. But other than that, there's really not many traffic issues in Land O'Lakes to speak of. And again, when you're comparing it to other suburbs around, and again, I'm thinking of Wesley Chapel, but even Odessa and Trinity and Lutz for that matter as well, the traffic is not going to be as bad as a lot of those areas. All right, guys, if you're getting value from this video, please do a couple of things. Please comment on the video, let me know what you think about Land O'Lakes so far, or give me your input if you happen to have visited or lived there before. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notifications bell. That way, every time we release a video about the suburbs north of Tampa or any of the new home tours, you'll be the first to be notified. And like I said, if you're considering making a move to any of the suburbs north of Tampa, you can hit us up in the contact information below. You can call, text, email. You can leave a comment down below. I respond to all of those personally. And if you want a free list of homes in your price points you're looking at, in the neighborhood you're looking at, you can snag that too. Just reach out to us. All right, let's get right back into the video here. Now, if public transit's going to be a consideration for you, it's really important to know that in Land O'Lakes, it is very, very, very thin on the ground. Now, there are some routes and some stops along State Road 54, but basically once you get north of that, it's slim to none. So you're certainly not going to be relying on any sort of public transport to be getting around Land O'Lakes. You will need to make other accommodations or look at other areas if that's going to be a primary concern for you. Okay, now let's say you're on board with the culture, the population, the traffic so far. Now let's talk about the climate. Now in Florida, there's a couple of things that we're famous for. One of them is the hot, hot, humid summers, and the other one, of course, is our friend, the hurricanes. Now, without a doubt, in the summer, it gets super, super hot. So I'm looking here and it says there are highs of 90s, lows of 73s in July and August. But it's important to note that on top of that, it's 100% humidity as well. And what happens is that humidity builds up throughout the day, and then in the afternoons, the heavens open and we get rainfall. So you're also getting 21 days a month on average of rain during those 2 months. And then of course, no sooner do we get through that, and I don't think there's any Floridian at all that does not get put on heightened alert, because we're moving into hurricane season. And we saw at the end of 2024 just how devastating that can be in the local area here, and it wasn't necessarily in the ways that we had anticipated. So just in case you completely missed the news, there were 2 back-to-back hurricanes in Helene and Milton that came all the way through the Tampa Bay area and for sure devastated the coastline, all the way from Sarasota up north through Tampa into Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus counties. A lot of these coastal areas were 4 or 5 feet underwater or more, and it was absolutely devastating. But one of the things that was maybe slightly less anticipated was the amount of flooding that happened inland when creeks and rivers burst their banks because of the excessive rainfall that we had there as well. And Land O'Lakes was certainly not immune to that. So you had somewhere like Lake Paget Estates that was about 3-4 feet underwater, and several other areas where there was flooding experience. So all of that to say, I think we got pretty complacent for a while because we hadn't really seen any significant storm come through and cause any significant damage. And now we know it can certainly happen, and we know it's likely going to happen again at some point. So hurricanes are real. We deal with the scare every single year. Some years it's closer than others, but be aware that you will need to have that on your mind in the summers. But the flip side of the climate argument is something that the snowbirds already know too well, which is that the mild winters are absolute perfection. So this year in 2025, we had a gorgeous January and February. It was so mild, the weather was beautifully pleasant. It didn't last anywhere near long enough, but it shows you what keeps bringing the snowbirds back time after time after time. So I'm talking highs of 70, lows of 49, and really only 1 or 2 really cold snaps where we're gonna get that frost. And so it's really cool to walk around in short sleeves when the rest of the country is shoveling snow off of their driveway. It's a real W for Florida. Now, you can't totally ditch the winter coats, but certainly it's much more tolerable, much more pleasant, and in my opinion, the best time to be in Florida. And so you pick your poison, right? If you want to be up in the Midwest, you're going to deal with tornadoes. If you're going to be out in the West Coast, you're going to be dealing with earthquakes. And also the weather's not perfect in either of those areas. So yes, you have the hot, humid summers and the hurricanes, but you're going to have issues pretty much wherever you live in the US. Now, another important thing to consider when moving to Land O'Lakes, Florida is the real estate and the type of home that you might be moving into. And that's where I've got you covered. Like I said, I've been selling homes here for the last 20 years. I'm a local real estate expert with my finger on the pulse of the local market. Now, the first thing to say is that obviously there are a bunch of lakefront homes. So if you're coming from an area where you're used to that and that's really appealing to you, Land O'Lakes might be somewhere you might want to zero in on because it has a significantly larger number of those types of homes than just about any other suburb in the Tampa Bay area. But also, because Land O'Lakes is a little bit more established and was built a little bit longer ago in general than some of the newer neighborhoods, you tend to have a little bit more land with some of the homes as well. But in Land O'Lakes at the moment, it's pretty much some of the newer communities that are taking all of the headlines. So we're talking about 8,700 homes, 3,000 acres of green space and preserves in there. There's walking trails and all sorts of cool stuff like that. They've got the amenity center already built out in there. The school is already built in there as well. And there are new build options where you can get great deals. And then of course you've got Bexley, which was just recently completed, one of the newer communities there, which has a whole host and variety of homes in there also. Fantastic amenities, really great proximity to the 589 Suncoast Tollway down to Tampa, so access is a breeze from there. Now they feature 1,200 acres of wildlife preserve and trails also, as well as some other great amenities. Then you've got some of the older neighborhoods like Ballantrae, Concord Station, and then you've got somewhere like Lake Padgett that I already mentioned before. And then the newest one of the crop is Angeline, and this is somewhere that's really geared for massive expansion. So Angeline is going to feature its own lagoon, which you've probably seen those before. They're pretty awesome, but Angeline's a little bit different from some of the other communities. But the plans for this feature massive expansion opportunities with 24 million square foot of commercial space. So that's where it really becomes its own township. But the amount of green space in this community is going to be preserved as well. So it's again, a really, really good balance and merging of the two. Now, all of this to say, the average price in Land O'Lakes is about $432,000 according to Zillow, which is lower than the majority of the neighborhoods and suburbs that I feature on this channel. So I'm thinking West Chase, Wesley Chapel, Odessa, Trinity, and even Lutz are all going to be more expensive than that. Now, it's not only home ownership costs that you want to take into account, but also the general cost of living as well. And Land O'Lakes comes out pretty well here as well. So Best Places has the average cost of living about 2% below the national average and about 5% below the Florida average. Although in general, the housing costs, although being low for the area, are higher than the national average. Now, it's worth noting that the property taxes are a little bit lower because we're in Pasco County there, not in Hillsborough County. And of course, Florida has no state income tax, which is always a huge benefit to take into consideration as well. And then it's great knowing about the cost of living, but of course you want to know how that stacks up to what your salary is going to be as well. So again, what I always like to do in this situation is take a look at a couple of professions and then compare them across various suburbs to make sure that we're giving a like-to-like comparison here. So I like to use ZipRecruiter, and what they have on their website is that in Land O'Lakes, if you are a teacher, you are going to be earning on average $46,000 per year. If you are an RN, that's going to be about $86,000 per year. And the average in Land O'Lakes as a whole is $46,000 per year. So again, use ZipRecruiter. It's an awesome resource. Look up your profession on there or what jobs are available. Okay guys, so I just want to take a quick break to remind you one more time that we're local real estate experts here, and we're always happy to provide this information to you and be here as a resource for you whenever you have any questions that need to be answered. So again, whether you're 9 days or 99 days away, there's never a bad time to start doing research, never a bad time to ask questions. You can hit us up at all of the contact information below. Call, text, email, leave a comment and I'll respond to it. I won't take up any more time except to say we would love to show you around town. Let's get back to the video. Now, of course, one of the biggest considerations you're going to have about whether to live somewhere or not, especially if you have little munchkins, is going to be the schools. And Land O'Lakes is very, very equipped here. The schools in Land O'Lakes are well above average when you compare them to the Tampa Bay area in general. It's one of the standout features, in fact, and one of the primary reasons that a lot of people I've worked with have ended up moving to Land O'Lakes. Now, Land O'Lakes High is consistently ranked in the top 100 high schools, but then you have private options like Academy at the Lakes, which is phenomenally ranked. Now, as I always say in these videos, use something like Niche or something like Great Schools, where you can go online, do your research, find out what the grades are, compare them to state and national averages, find parent reviews on there. But in general, if schools are a concern for you, I think you're going to find that Land O'Lakes is more than satisfactory. And then what we're seeing as well is that areas like Bexley are starting to build their own schools within the communities as well. So not only do you have the awesome existing public school features, but as these communities, these newer communities get developed and built out, a lot of them are beginning to feature their own zone schools as well. So definitely be on the lookout for those. And in fact, I've had customers that have put their kids through Bexley Elementary and absolutely raved about it. And it's also worth mentioning that Land O'Lakes on Crime Grades, which is the website I use to research crime, scores an A+, but also scores A+ in every single category. I think it's the only suburb I've ever featured that has an A+ across all categories. So if crime is a consideration to you, or lack of even, Land O'Lakes is probably going to be one of your best options. And then let's just talk about the location a little bit more. I've already told you it has fantastic proximity to Tampa, but you're also close to Wesley Chapel as well. So whereas there's not so much to do in Land O'Lakes, it's actually maybe one of the cons of living there. Because it's so close to Wesley Chapel, you're really just a 15-20 minute journey away from all of that stuff right on your doorstep. So like the Main Event and Tiger Woods Pop Stroke and Costco and shops at Wiregrass and Tampa Premium Outlets are all right there without having to deal with the Wesley Chapel traffic day in and day out. So definitely a positive. And because it's not as far east as somewhere like Wesley Chapel, the proximity to the beaches is a little bit better as well. Again, it's not all pristine and clean. It has a little roughness to it, which I absolutely love. So, one thing you're not going to get in somewhere like Wesley Chapel, just because it hasn't been around long enough, is something like Hungry Harry's Barbecue or Larry's Deli. They're really kind of focal points of the local area of Land O'Lakes, and they have a little grimy feel to them, but I love them. And then you have some really cool waterfront eating as well. Or you can go to In the Loop Brewing and have some awesome beer and beer flights right on the lake there. So it has some options outside of what might be typical in some of these other suburbs. And again, I'll quite often drive down there just to sample some of these places because they are so different compared to a lot of the other suburbs. So even if you don't end up in Land O'Lakes, be sure to check out the restaurants there. I'm thinking again like Ukulele Brands and somewhere like that, because they are awesome alternatives and feature something just outside of the norm. All right, guys, now I did promise if you stuck around to the end, I was going to give you an insider tip, something that you might not find online. And that is, if you are thinking of moving to Land O'Lakes, be sure to check out the new build options. Now, I know some people say, I don't want to wait for it to be built, or man, I don't like the new construction these days. And where it might be true that maybe the construction quality is not quite on par with some of the older homes, the one thing it does give you is spending power. I was just at one of the new builders over there the other day, and they are buying down the interest rate to 4.99% if you use their preferred lender, and giving $30,000 in closing costs. And when you're comparing that to the resale market, that tempts a lot of people into making a concession on something that they maybe wouldn't normally love in order to have that money back in their pocket, or to have their mortgage payment be $300-400 a month less. So while there are some fantastic deals to be had on the resale side, for sure, as the market slows down a little bit in Florida, don't totally eliminate new builds. Be sure to add them to the mix. Do an apples to apples comparison. See which one works out best for you. And again, if you want to know what the best new build communities are, or the best new deals that are out there at the moment, be sure to reach out to us. We'd love to explain them to you. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for everything you need to know about Land O'Lakes. I hope you have a little bit more information at hand now to decide whether it's the right place for you and your family to move to if you're considering making a move to the Tampa Bay area. Now, if you are still thinking of making it your home, or any of the suburbs north of Tampa for that matter, like I said, be sure to reach out to us at the contact information below if you need any assistance. We'd love to show you around town, or simply answer any questions that you might have. Again, local experts on the ground for the last 20 years. Again, one final reminder to please like the video video. Comment below, let me know what you think of Land O'Lakes. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell. That way, all of the videos we release about Land O'Lakes or Lutz, Wesley Chapel, Brooksville, Spring Hill, West Chase, any of those suburbs, you'll be the first to know about it. And be sure to check out our other videos about Land O'Lakes, such as the pros and cons of living there. Finally, if you want that list of homes, either new builds or resales, be sure to leave a comment or reach out to us at the email address and you can snag that for free. Until next time, guys, thank you for watching. Hope to show you around town one day. I'm Ross Hardy from the Hardy team. It's time to love where you live.